Jacob's Well, a popular swimming hole near Wimberley, will remain closed to swimmers for the foreseeable future.
For decades, Jacob's Well let divers in and quietly kept some of them. People guessed at what was waiting at the very bottom. People died trying to reach it. And the deepest point stayed a rumor, until divers finally got there and pushed their cameras into passages no living person had entered in years.
They're always asking a ton of questions. How far does it go? How deep is it? How deep is it right here? And so forth. So most people never know the extent of the swimming hole that they're swimming in.
What those cameras found is not a creature, not treasure, and not anything the people floating on the surface have ever been told. It is shocking. And the most disturbing part of it isn't down in the dark at all. It's happening right now, on the surface, while you watch this. The perfect surface. Jacob's Well sits near the small town of Wimberley in Hayes County, about 45 minutes southwest of Austin, and on the surface it is one of the most beautiful places in Texas.
Well, despite some recent rain, the drought not letting up in Texas, raising concern at popular outdoor spots here in Central Texas.
KVU's Matt Fernandez shows us how dry conditions are impacting Lake Travis and Jacob's Well.
It is a natural spring, blue-green and crystal clear, holding at a near constant 68 degrees, no matter how hard the Texas sun beats down, and its water feeds Cypress Creek and runs on toward the Blanco River as a lifeline for the whole region. Right at the heart of it is the mouth of the well, a circular opening in the limestone about 12 feet across, and people have floated over it since at least 1850, peering down as the walls fall away into blue and then into black. But the people who lived here longest did not float over it for fun. The old stories around water like this carried a warning. A sense that a spring this deep and this dark was not a place to play, but a place that led somewhere you did not go. For a long time, that sounded like superstition. Then divers started going down, and the deeper they got, the less it sounded like superstition.
Back around the year 2000, attempted to investigate the well. They were told by some local residents that it was more or less a waste of time because the well only went down 100 feet.
And the more it sounded like a warning that nobody had bothered to read. The mouth. Here is where the postcard ends. Beneath that pretty 12-foot opening, the well drops straight down for about 30 feet before the shape of the place turns against you. That vertical shaft is the only part you can see from above. After 30 feet, the passage bends, tilts, and keeps going, descending more than 100 feet further into the limestone through a series of chambers and tunnels that twist and pinch and open and pinch again. There are 4 chambers in the part of the cave that divers learn to name.
What we do is the equivalent of underwater mountain climbing. When people climb Everest, they establish a base camp. They move equipment from Camp 1 to Camp 2, Camp 2 to Camp 3. We do exactly the same thing underwater.
The first sits around 30 feet down, just past the daylight. The second drops lower, the third lower still. And then there is the fourth, deeper than the rest. And the fourth chamber is where the stories stop being adventure stories and start being something else. Because past the fourth chamber, the passage narrows to a slot so tight you cannot fit through it wearing your tanks. To keep going, you have to take the air off your back, push it ahead of you, and squeeze your body through a gap in the rock, while the only thing keeping you alive floats out in front of you. The walls press in from more than one side at once. The floor is fine silt, and the second a fin stirs it, that silt blooms up into a cloud that erases your vision completely, sometimes in a single second. One wrong kick, and the water you could see through a moment ago becomes a wall of brown nothing. Now you are blind, deep underground, in a tunnel barely wider than your shoulders, with solid rock between you and the sky. There is no up to swim toward, no surface to break, no hand to grab. There is only the line you came in on, if you can still feel it, and the slow math of how much air is left. I need you to understand how different that is from anything you have ever felt in water. Out in the ocean, if something goes wrong, you can almost always go up. In a flooded cave, up is rock. You cannot surface. You can only find your way back the way you came, in the dark, often blind, with a finite amount of air on your back and a clock running down to 0. Make one real mistake at depth in a place like this, and the cave does not punish you later. It keeps you. That is the truth living underneath the swimming hole. And Jacob's Well has been collecting on that truth for a very long time. The names we lost. Between 1964 and 1984, at least 8 divers went into Jacob's Well and never came out alive. Let me say that again, because the number gets repeated so casually it loses its weight. 8 people, in 20 years, in one spring. Some were inexperienced, pulled in by the beauty and the dare of it. Some were trained, certified, careful people who understood exactly what they were walking into and went in anyway because the need to see what was down there was stronger than the fear of it. That should tell you how compelling this place is. The fact that they did not come back should tell you how unforgiving it is. The official reasons read like a checklist, and every item on it is real. Silt clouds that kill visibility. Equipment problems in tunnels too tight to fix them in. Divers losing track of which way is out in a maze that folds back on itself in the dark. And the oldest killer of all, running out of air before you find the way home. Each of those is true, and each one, on its own, almost lets you keep believing this is just a dangerous cave like any other. The kind of place where bad things happen to people who get careless or unlucky. But Jacob's Well has a particular cruelty the statistics never capture, and you only feel it once you understand what the survivors kept saying about the shape of the place. Because this cave does not just take you, it hides what it has taken. Before we go down to the part that genuinely changed how this place is understood, I want to ask you for something small, and it matters more than it sounds. If a place like this, beautiful and quiet and far more dangerous than it looks, is exactly the kind of story you want more of, take 1 second and subscribe to Reef Discovery. That is the whole thing that lets me keep going to the bottom of places like this and bringing back what I find. 1 tap. Then come with me, because we are about to talk about the diver this well kept for 20 years. 20 years down. Picture it. It is somewhere around the turn of the millennium, and a survey diver is deep inside Jacob's Well, past the 3rd chamber, easing line into a passage no living person has entered in 20 years. The water is heavy and still. The cold has worked its way through everything he is wearing and settled into his hands. The only sound is the slow mechanical rhythm of his own breathing and the hiss of bubbles crawling up the rock above him. His light cuts one narrow cone through the black, and everything outside that cone simply does not exist. He is not here to find anyone. He is here to map, to measure, to finally chart the tunnels that have killed so many people and turn this place from a rumor into a drawing. He has done dives like this before. It is patient, unglamorous work, and most of the time, the most interesting thing you find is the next bend in the rock. He sweeps the light along the floor, the silt curling up in slow ribbons under his fins, and the beam catches something pale in the gloom ahead. He stops. He hangs there in the water, neutral, motionless, and steadies his breathing the way the training drills into you. He brings the light around, slow, and lets it settle on the shape. For half a second, his mind tries to turn it into something harmless. A pale rock, a trick of the silt, a fold in the wall. It is none of those things. And there, resting in the dark exactly where the well left him 2 decades before, is Kent Maupin. Maupin went into Jacob's Well in 1979, and he never came back up. That part, as awful as it is to say, was not unusual here. What was unusual is what came next, which was nothing. They could not reach him. The passages were too tight, too deep, too choked with silt, too lethal to bring him out. So the search ended without a body, and Kent Maupin stayed exactly where the cave had put him. Not for 2 days, not for 2 weeks, for about 20 years. Sit with that for a second. For 20 years, every single summer, kids kept hurling themselves off the rocks above this spring, laughing, daring each other, smacking into the cold blue water a few dozen feet over his head. And not one of them knew. They swam over him for 20 years. Birthdays passed up there. A whole generation grew up. And the entire time, down in the dark, the well kept him exactly as it had taken him. When he was finally found, it was not by a rescue crew coming to carry him home. It was by accident. By a diver who came to measure a cave and instead came face to face with the cost of it. He had a job to do, lines to run, numbers to record, and in one slow sweep of a flashlight, all of that stopped mattering because the cave had just answered a question nobody had dared ask out loud in 2 decades. And somewhere up in the daylight, a family that had spent 20 years not knowing was about to get an answer they had long since stopped expecting. So, When people ask what the cameras found at the bottom of Jacob's Well, this is part of the answer. And it is heavier than any story anyone could ever invent. The cameras found the cost, and just how long this beautiful place can hold, onto what it takes before anyone is brave enough to come back for it. What the cameras mapped. That mapping work was the beginning of the first time anyone truly understood the inside of Jacob's Well, instead of just surviving it. Serious, organized exploration by trained cave divers began around the year 2000, and a group of volunteers eventually committed to one goal: not thrill, not spectacle, mapping. Going section by section, dive by dive, dragging survey line and cameras through passages that had only ever been measured in the number of people who died in them, building the first real picture of what is under that 12-foot hole. And what they found changed the scale of the whole thing. For most of its history, people pictured Jacob's Well as a deep shaft with a bottom somewhere down in the dark, a hole you could, in theory, reach the end of. The mapping showed that idea was wrong in a way that is genuinely hard to hold in your head while you were floating on the surface looking down. The cave does not bottom out into a tidy basement. It opens into a system, thousands of feet of flooded passage, splitting into two main conduits that run off through the limestone in different directions, carved out over a span of time you cannot really imagine. Every dive pushed the known edge of it a little further, and every time the divers thought they had reached the back of it, the cave opened up and kept going. When the survey was done, Jacob's Well turned out to be the longest cave in its entire county, and the second longest fully submerged cave in all of Texas. Thousands of feet of tunnel, much of it tighter than a coffin, threaded under quiet hills where people picnic and hike with no idea of the labyrinth beneath their feet. And once you can see the map, the deaths stop looking like bad luck and start looking like geometry.
Resource conservation managers have actually used the map that we've created of Jacob's Well.
The cave is full of features almost designed to kill a frightened, disoriented person. Tight squeezes that punish hesitation. Junctions where the wrong turn takes you deeper instead of out. And there is one of them so cruel it almost feels deliberate. And it has a name. They call it the False Chimney. The False Chimney. Picture yourself deep inside the cave. Your light is your entire world. Your air is a number you are watching with everything you have left. And then the silt blooms, or your nerve cracks, or something just goes wrong and you need out. Now, your instinct, the deepest instinct a human being has in water, is to go up. Up is air. Up is light. Up is life. So you look for a way up, and in one part of Jacob's Well, you find one. A vertical shaft rising above you, a chimney in the rock that looks exactly like the route back toward the surface, toward the blue, toward the sky. It is not. The false chimney is a dead end. A shaft that climbs and then simply stops in solid rock, going nowhere. To a calm, trained diver reading a map on dry land, it is a known hazard, a line on a chart, a thing to avoid. To a person in trouble at 100 feet, blind and low on air, and screaming inside their own skull to go up, it is a trap baited with the one thing they want most. They swim up into it because up is supposed to be the answer. They keep rising, expecting the light to grow, expecting the open water of the surface to come. And instead, the walls close in and the ceiling arrives, and there is nowhere left to go but a fall back down. They may no longer have the air to survive, and it closes around them. That is why even strong, competent divers have died here. It is not only that the well is deep, or dark, or tight. It is that it hands you the wrong door at the exact moment you are least able to think. And the wrong door looks just like the right one. This is a place that rewards the diver who stays calm and slow and methodical when every nerve is firing, and quietly kills the one who panics. And panic is the most human thing in the world when you are blind and out of air 100 feet down. The current makes all of it worse. This is an artesian spring, so in normal times, water is being pushed up and out from below, which means a diver fighting their way deeper is working against that flow, burning air and strength, then trusting that same flow to help carry them home. There is nothing supernatural about it. It is stone and water and physics in a place like this is enough. Why it pulls. Here is the simple version of how Jacob's Well even exists. Rainwater slowly dissolves the limestone under the hill country. hollowing out a hidden maze of tunnels over countless years.
Local water experts say Jacob's Well needs at least 15 inches of rain to improve. That is a lot of rain that is needed. It's so unfortunate because it's not just, the beauty of the whole thing, but it's dangerous. You get the bacteria. It's just...
And the Trinity Aquifer fills that maze and pushes its water up to the surface on its own, with no pump at all. When the aquifer is full, the spring runs hard and the cave below stays flooded and alive.
Rainwater really just runoff, right? So what Jacob's Well really relies on is what's coming out of the aquifer. So we got to get the aquifer level up.
Really needs to rain out in Johnson City for us, which is where the Trinity Aquifer recharges for Jacob's Well. I think it'll be back one day, just maybe not on that timeline we originally thought, but...
For 100 years, everyone asked the same thing about this place. How deep does it go? And what is hiding at the bottom? The mapping finally answered that. But while everyone was busy staring down into the dark, the real shock was taking shape somewhere else entirely. Not at the bottom, at the source. And it turns the whole story of Jacob's Well inside out. The well is dying. Here is the part almost nobody who grew up swimming here ever thought was possible. The well that swallowed divers for decades, the bottomless seeming spring, the cold blue heart of the hill country. It is running dry. For almost all of its recorded history, Jacob's Well flowed without stopping, through droughts, through brutal summers, through the worst dry spells Texas could throw at it. The spring kept shoving water up out of the dark, around 2 million gallons a day. People who studied it for decades will tell you flatly, it did not stop. It was the one thing you could count on. It outlasted everything. It has now stopped flowing 6 times in recorded history, and almost every one of those times has happened recently.
So take a look at what it looks like this afternoon. Not so much a pool, but more hole in the ground. The watershed reveals that this is the 6th time since the summer of 2000.
In the summer of 2022, the flow dropped below average and the county suspended swimming, and by that October, it hit 0.
The Watershed Association in Hays County gave a tough update today, revealing Jacob's Well remains closed as the spring experiences 0 flow.
The spring went silent, and then it mostly stayed that way year after year, sitting at or near 0, the famous water gone shallow and still. A hard rain or a flood would tease everyone with a sudden gush and a flicker of hope, and within days it would collapse back toward nothing. As of the spring of 2026, even after wet weather, there was no flow at all. And here is the part that should make you sit up, because this is not just bad luck with the weather. Yes, the region has been crushed by a long drought, but Jacob's Well survived worse droughts in the past without ever going dry. What is different now is us. The same Trinity Aquifer that feeds this spring is the one a fast-growing population is pumping out of the ground through more and more wells, faster than the rain can ever put it back, including a water utility that got cited for drawing far past its limit. One person who has watched the spring for over 30 years called it the worst he has ever seen it. The simplest way anyone put it, it is like a bank account you have overdrawn, where you keep spending and never deposit. And the balance has finally hit 0. Every new well sunk into that aquifer is one more straw in the same glass, and the glass is almost empty. And it is not only the swimming hole at stake. When Jacob's Well stops, Cypress Creek downstream begins to starve, and the same aquifer that feeds the spring is the drinking water for the people living right on top of it. The thing that looks like a story about a pretty spring is really a story about whether there is enough water left to go around. So, look at the whole shape of it. A spring that killed at least 8 divers and held one of them in the dark for 20 years. A cave that maps out into thousands of feet of flooded labyrinth no one fully reckoned with. And that same dangerous, beautiful, patient place is now going quiet. Not because anyone finally tamed it, but because the very water that made it deadly is being drained out from under it. The well did not run out of victims. It is running out of water. Still open. For generations, none of the danger below ever shut the surface down. People swam over that 12-foot mouth their whole lives. Kids jumped off the rocks above a passage where a man's body lay undiscovered. And the thing that finally stopped the swimming was not the deaths, not the false chimney, not the silt that has blinded experienced divers. It was the drought and the overpumping, The well closed because it is dying, not because it is dangerous.
Jacobs Well, it's one of the most popular destinations for Central Texas. During the summer, it's so popular, as soon as tickets go on sale, it books up through the entire summer. But this popular watering hole could dry up unless we make some big changes.
The natural area around it is still open. You can hike there, stand at the edge, look down into the spring. And when the water comes back, and a whole town is desperate for it to come back, the swimming will return too, because Wimberley's identity and a real piece of its economy are tied to this place. I get that, and floating at the surface really is a different risk than squeezing your tanks through a slot in the rock 100 feet down. But there is a question underneath all of this that deserves to be asked out loud, and right now it is mostly being asked in quiet water district meetings almost none of us will ever sit in. We keep treating Jacobs Well like a swimming hole. It is the open mouth of a cave that has killed people. Sitting on top of an aquifer, we are draining faster than nature can refill it. What we owe a place like that, how honest we are willing to be about what it really is instead of what it looks like, is not a question science can answer. It is a question about what we value and who pays when we get it wrong. The real monster. The thing that makes Jacobs Well truly unsettling is not the body it held for 20 years. It is not the false chimney. It is not the 8 names on that list. It is the gap between what you see and what is actually there. Look at it, and you see summer, cold water, sunlight, the simple joy of throwing yourself off a rock into something perfect. What you do not see is the maze of stone and water right beneath you that has killed at least 8 people, kept one of them for 2 decades, and has been building for longer than our entire species has existed. You do not see the false chimney waiting in the dark for the next person who panics. You do not see that the whole thing is slipping away through our own hands right now, while the surface still looks perfect. And that is the part I cannot shake. The danger here was never hiding. It was right under everyone the whole time, 12 feet wide and open to the sky, and we looked straight down into it and saw a nice place to cool off. The divers who finally reached the bottom of Jacobs Well did something extraordinary. They went further than anyone before them. They charted the passages, named the traps, recovered a man the cave had kept for 20 years, and brought back the first true picture of what is really down there. And what they found was not a creature and not a treasure. It was harder to look at than either. It was the truth about a place we thought we understood. The cameras reached the bottom. What they found was a maze that kills, a spring we are draining faster than the rain can ever pay back, and the slow dawning realization that the most beautiful swimming hole in Texas may be the most honest warning we have ever ignored. If this is the kind of story you want more of, places that look like paradise and turn out to be something far stranger underneath, do me a favor and subscribe to Reef Discovery so the next one finds you. And I want to hear from you in the comments. If you had the chance, knowing everything you now know, would you still swim over the mouth of Jacobs Well? Tell me honestly, I read them.